Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Peter. This is a campaign diary. We've done this 1,000 times, so I hope you're all ready. When last we left our heroes. Now, from the last episode, you'll remember that our heroes were coming south towards Renevas. They had been informed that there was a large army, and they were told to go down to this cave and negotiate with this roper and try and get it to kind of turn to their side so it would eat all the Fritzolas soldiers as they were coming through the tunnels. Well, they managed to do that, and then they were trying to turn the army south. Now, when that messenger had arrived at Daxan from that session and explained kind of what was going on, he also asked them to then come to Renevas afterwards. So the players were like, okay, we did our best with the ropers. We did and tried to get the army to turn. Let's head to Renevas. And I basically, kind of fast forward that, you guys travel to Renevas and you guys get outside the hills. And as you get within, a couple miles, you start to see smoke on the horizon. They're like, that's never a good sign. Smoke's never a good sign. I was like, keep going. They're like, okay. We ride forward. I was like, you guys come to a small edge of a hill, and you look over, and you can see Renevas under siege. And the players were like, oh, crap. Now, they were like, all right, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And they were kind of like, this is bad. This is really, really, really bad. So they're there, and they're thinking, they're planning, what do we do now? And as they're sitting at the crest of this hill, a lone horseman rides up. So prior to this, Sydney had been playing a dark elf, and I'll honestly admit it was so long ago I don't even remember the name, and I don't think anyone here in our group remembers the name except for Sydney herself. And she'd been playing this dark elf, and Sydney hadn't shown up at a lot of sessions. That's just the nature of Sydney's schedule. She's not able to make it to a lot of our sessions, which is unfortunate. So she approached me a couple days before this session here currently, and she explained that she wanted to actually switch characters. She wanted to instead play a paladin, a human paladin. And I said, okay, that's fine with me. And this is where my whole Bartholomits private militia kind of became a great device. I had done it so it would allow us to bring new characters in or switch characters or kind of have NPCs show up for some reason and for it to kind of make total sense. So as the heroes are sitting at the crest of this hill, kind of overlooking this entire siege, they see a lone horseman coming from the north around and looping towards them, and they're like, oh shoot, they all kind of come down, while this horseman rides up to the hill, and sure enough, it's this paladin, in shining armor, and this is where we meet Sydney's new character, Astor, the paladin of the sun. And basically this was just an excuse of Sydney kind of showing up. She hadn't been around in several sessions, so what we had kind of just said was that she was back at Ufringa reading, because her character loves books. That's one of her quirks from her Dark Elf, was the character always wanted to be reading, always wanted to read every book. So Ufringa, having the massive library, clearly could have kept her occupied. So now Sydney comes in with her new paladin character, is ready to rumble, and it also provided an excellent excuse for me to be able to kind of give the players some information. Through Astor, who has been here at the siege kind of more or less the whole time, is able to explain a couple things, that they've been sieging, and the players are like, alright, well, we need to get into the city. And Astor explains, well, all the gates are closed and, under siege and other kind of, controlled by Fritzolas' armies. However, the river cuts through the city. What we can do is slip in through one of the grates. While there's a solid wall, there's a grate that allows the river to just flow underneath it naturally. We can go through there. Braden, with his strength or something like that, can surely bust open a chunk for us to slide through. That way we can get inside. And the players are like, that sounds great. We're going to ride around. I said, okay, how are you guys going to ride around? They're like, well, we're going to give it a fairly wide berth. That way we don't have to do any real stealth checks. I said, okay, that's fair. So they do that. They come along the river and they kind of work their way up. And they get into the river. And they're like, all right, well, guess we're all going in for a swim. So they all get in. And Sonia's like, I said, Sonia, you're hydrophobic, right? Your character is? She's like, yeah, Garza's hydrophobic. Okay, Garza, roll me a wisdom save to, not be frightened. She's like, okay. Rolls, makes her safe. I was like, okay, you can get in the water and not, have a panic attack. She's like, okay, good. I said, Braden, you're going to rip open a couple of those pieces of grate? He's like, absolutely. He's like, can I make a perception check, find a weak spot? I was like, absolutely. He makes a perception check. He fails. However, Hazel comes in and is like, well, let me make a perception check of my own. I'm like, all right, you find, yeah, you can see there's a couple who are well worn away. And Braden's like, okay, I want to try and bust open an athletics check there. I said, okay, and he does, and he succeeds, and that's not a big surprise, but I also didn't want it to be a huge obstacle for the players. So they are able to swim in, and it's a bit of a tight squeeze. I explained for them. There wasn't like a huge hole, but just enough. They're like, okay, that's fine. So now they're in the city, and they're like, all right, well, we should probably get to the castle. That's probably our main objective. We need to protect Bartholomits. That's our job as his private militia. And they're like, okay, we want to go through the city. So I knew they would need to get to this castle. So what I did is they came up with a couple of like encounters. I decided it would be fun for them to have a couple things that could happen along the way. And as we would go, I would kind of throw it as I felt, and I came up with 3 things. The first one was they would come to like a building of some sort, something on fire, something besieged by soldiers. What they would have to do is hold off enemy soldiers while they tried to allow the civilians to escape. Kind of a, one of those time things from video games. Since most of the players come from a video gaming tradition, I felt this would be kind of a fun throwback to some of that stuff. These would be a lot of missions that they would be familiar with. The second one I had was a find a lost boy. A mother comes up to them and says, please, 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 my son is missing. Please help me find my son. And they're like, okay. And they're like, we'll scatter about, we'll look at it. Meanwhile, they'd run into some soldiers. And the third one was, clearing kind of an LZ, from video games. It's like, clear this LZ so we can get the chopper in or something like that. Here it was, clear this space. That way we can kind of regroup and then move out from there. So when we got there and they're starting to run through the city, I was like, which one do I want to throw? And I just kind of looked at it. I said, I'm going to throw the mother-child one. I said, as you guys you run past a couple civilians, and one of the mother, she comes up and she's frantically like, please, 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 help me. And they're all like, what's up? Just relax. What is wrong? She's like, my son. I can't find my son. He's only 3 years old. I can't find him. And they're like, oh, okay. And Hazel and Sonia are like, all right, ma'am, what does your son look like? Can you describe him to us? She's like, well, he's very short. He's only like 2 or 3. He's only 3 years old. He has short brown hair. He has, he's wearing, I think, a red shirt or something like that. They're like, okay, excellent. We can do this. And they're like, okay, calm down, ma'am, calm down. And Hazel's like, I'm going to stay with the woman and calm her down while the rest of the team goes to explore and find the son. And they're like, all right. And they scatter and they say, who's going where? And they're like, I'm going to go north. And Brayden's like, I'll check down when the other while. I was like, everyone roll me investigation checks. They're like, all right. And Hazel, she's staying with the mother, but she rolls a nat 20. I said, Hazel, dang it, you can see a hair. You can kind of, you see a boy kind of turn a corner, 2 blocks, if you will, down. And everyone's like, go, 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 go. And they start booking after it. And they turn his corner, and sure enough, it's the son. And I was like, all right, you found a son. And Sonia's like, okay, I'm going to take him. And the son, I was like, the son says, she's like, athletics check. I'm going to grab him, picks him up, takes him to the mother. And the mother's like, oh, thank you so much. And the player's like, all right, we need to keep moving. We can't stall anymore. We have to get to the castle. And so they run, and as they're running, they come and run past a couple guards, a couple city guards, Bartholomews soldiers. And they like, you there, they recognize the symbol. You, please, stop. We need your help. And the party's like, all right, soldiers, what can we do? And one of the soldiers steps forward. He's like, we're trying to regroup. We need forces. There's a marketplace, a small like square that some shops have been set up. Please, there's some enemy soldiers there. Clear it. That way we can use it as a place to regroup and kind of as a small command outpost. And the party's like, all right, we'll do that. And they find it was not hard to find. They follow the soldiers' instructions, like 2 blocks down, just head east. And they do that, and sure enough, they come to this city square, and they look around, and they're like, all right, perception checks, what's around. And I described it, there's stalls set up, with the classic old, stall in the city square kind of thing. Nice buildings around, and they're like, all right, what kind of guards? I was like, well, you see a small contingent of Fritzolas soldiers over in the other corner. I'm like, all right. And they're like, all right, what else? They're like, all right, describe the soldiers. I said, well, roll me another perception check. Someone else rolled. They did well. I said, all right, well, there looks to be a couple soldiers. There's 1 or 2 archers. It looks like some guy in robes, probably a mage. They're like, all right, we can take this. I said, all right, you guys. At this point, Sam's like, I'll draw a bow. He's like, are we all ready? They're like, yep. He's like, I'll fire at them. I said, all right, roll. He hits. He deals some damage. I said, okay, guys, initiative, surprise round. They're like, excellent. And they all roll initiative, and the battle comes underway. And at first, it's like four guards, 2 archers, and 1 mage. And they're like, all right. And with those numbers, it was 7v6. 7 guards versus our 6 players. I think we had an entire party that evening. And it was a lot of fun. And, Sneaky's been gone. He's just kind of left. Nathan, unfortunately, just kind of, I don't say he quit, but he was just always so busy. We were just like, hey, sorry, really. He's like, it's okay. But we had a full party otherwise. We had the full 6. And they're like, okay, we can do this. And they start taking him on, and Brayden's cutting through people. And a fairly generic, and they got a surprise round, so they were able to cut down it get to 6v6 plus do some extra damage all within the first round and then by the second round they'd kill some more guys. And I said, you know, at the end of the second round, you hear a thump, 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 and out from around the corner of one of the tall buildings you see a large stone golem come out. Thump, thump, thump. Now, again, I didn't have a monster manual, or rather, I had a 4th edition monster manual. And 4th edition and 5th edition are not quite completely compatible. There's a little minor differences. So I tried to kind of adjust it and give it some abilities, and it was mostly just a kind of a big stack of hit points that could deal a ton of damage. I thought it was kind of a fun boss. And the players are like, alright, we can do this. Let's take this on. Now, I'm going to tell you guys something the players did not know at the time. They know, of course, now, but they were not supposed to win. They had been in this war for a long time. Most of our sessions were kind of taking place during this war. And as a writer, I was kind of getting tired of it. I wanted to change things up. And my idea was this. The players lose. The players get beaten. The players kind of, Fritzolas wins, if you will. He takes over. He'll kill Bartholomits, and he'll take over Renevas, and he'll take the party, and he'll basically say, work for me or die. But the party would kind of get rescued, if you will, and they would get sent away. At the time, I wasn't quite sure where they would get sent, but I knew they would kind of get, teleported or put on a boat, kind of taken elsewhere by, someone in by someone in Fritzolas' inner circle. That way it would kind of seem, to kind of give this very tense sense, this change in pace, kind of, end of book 1, beginning of book 2, if you will. And so I had intentionally grabbed the golem, which I knew was very tough, and I was expecting to be able to beat the entire party, more or less on its own. And I knew a flesh golem would be too weak, and I was looking at maybe an iron golem, but I was like, I didn't want it to seem like it was completely impossible. I wanted to seem like there was some hope, and so I was like, stone golem seemed about right. I adjusted some things. I was like, okay, this will be good. I threw it out there, and they continued the battle. And now with the stone golem there, he's able to lay waste to some of the bigger guys. I mean, he doesn't take out Brave, but he smashes Sonia down. Meanwhile, there's still a couple guards. The archers are dealing damage to, for instance, Hazel and Danny and Sam, who are in the back of the party. The mage is sitting there kind of throwing some spells. And the battle kind of starts going a little sideways. Rather than this very seem like it was going to be an easy victory for the party, it now becomes a lot harder, and the party starts to struggle, and they have to start healing each other, and Astor's doing its best to heal, and Astor goes down, and Danny's like, well, crap, and Sam comes up, and he's like, I heal you just a little bit using my cure wounds. Astor comes back up, Astor deals some damage, Sam's taken down, Danny goes down, Sonia goes down, Hazel goes down, all the while, slowly working their way. And people come back up. Sam's able to raise more people. It's very kind of going back and forth. All the while, the enemies are falling kind of one by one by one. But all the while, the golem remains just smashing at Sonia and Astor and Braden. And the guys are like, we gotta take this out. We gotta get rid of everybody else so we can focus on this thing. And finally, they're able to clear the field. And it comes down to just the golem. And even then, at this point, it is Hazel, it is Sonia, and it is Braden. Kind of the only one standing left. No healing spells, nothing. It's just what do they have left against this golem. And Braden's like, okay, I'm coming in with this thing. And he goes at it. And he hits it. And at this point, he had dropped it to the bloody level. And I said, Braden, you deal with damage. And the thing just explodes. He's like, I killed it? I was like, no. It is being full of fractures and it explodes. And it's as if it's shedding a shell. But I said, everybody, roll me dexterity saves. And everyone rolls. And I think everyone succeeded. But I rolled damage. And it was just enough. I only rolled like 2d6 or 2d8. Just a little bit of damage, but Hazel and Sonia were at such low levels that even with it, the few hit points they had left were taken out by this explosion of stone. And they're sent down, and finally it comes down to Braden versus the golem. And it becomes mano-a-mano, and the whole party's like kind of sitting at the edge of their seats, and he's coming at it. And of course, Braden's got a high AC. He's got an AC of 20, and the golem's got, I think at the time I had it like a +5 to hit. So the golem's got to get 15 or higher in order to hit Braden. And he's coming at it with his axe. He's just wailing on this thing. Meanwhile, the golem's just trying to smash him, doing a little bit of damage with 2 hits per round, and Braden only getting the 1. It's going tense, and the party's just like, and finally Braden's like, I'm enraged, I'm frenzying. He like pulls all his stuff, and he's like, I'm going for 1 bag hit, and he hits it and smashes it. He drops it to 0. And I said, the thing explodes, deals more damage. I rolled some more dice, like, 2d8, kind of the same thing as I did when it hit bloodied. And Braden, I'm like, how much? He's like, Braden? He's like, I'm at like 3 hit points. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Brayden has survived. I was like, this wasn't supposed to happen. The whole time everyone's like, this is insane. Brayden's like, yes, I beat it. He's like, he's like, what? I beat this thing almost solo. He's all pumped up. Everyone's kind of like screaming like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. I'm like, Brayden, you see guards flood into the square. He's like, oh sweet, it's my guard. It's like, nope. Brayden, roll me a wisdom save. He's like, what? Roll me a wisdom save. He rolls like a 11. I was like, Brayden, you fall unconscious. And they're like, what? This was probably one of my shortcomings, if you will. I was forcing the players to lose. Again, I was expecting the players to lose to the golem, and if I'd gone with the iron golem, they certainly would have. And I think they would have felt a little more validated. They would have felt like it was a little more okay. And here was clearly that I was trying to make them lose. And I think that bothered them a little bit, and I can understand. It would have been frustrating for me as a player if that had got to happen to me. And that was where I ended it, right then and there. We were starting to push the end of our, we set our time for a session. We say, okay, we're going to play till here, then people got to go home. And at this point, we were kind of already pushing it, so I also kind of just ended it right there. And everyone's like, what? What's going on? And I just kind of left it there. I didn't tell them too much. I explained what was a little bit of my thinking. I just explained that they were kind of supposed to lose, and that Brayden kind of, went against expectations here, and kind of Kobayashi Maru beat the impossible. And the party was kind of like, oh, okay, it's kind of cool that, he was able to beat you. We're a little upset and a little kind of annoyed and kind of also just curious on what the heck is going on here while you're trying to make us lose. But I didn't want to reveal everything yet. And I left that kind of until the end. And I was like, end of book 1 to them. And they're like, okay, end of book 1. So what's book 2 got to start? And I was like, wait and see. So that was that campaign diary. I try and have a lesson kind of, so that you guys can take away from my campaign diaries. And what can be taken away from this one, I'm not really sure. I would say with writing, if you need a way to change things up, don't do it like I did. Don't try and force your players to lose. That's a bad idea. And don't make it, what I did. Instead, give them a bunch of bad guys. Make them come across an impossible force. I think that works okay, but make sure it is impossible. And then don't do what I did where I forced them. I should have let Brayden kind of, when we come back, say everyone's unconscious. Brayden, you're all that's left. Here's what you're going to do. And, have Brayden then have to take on some stuff and kind of have to deal with the fact that everyone's unconscious. And then, kind of maybe throw some more stuff against him so that way he would have lost kind of more naturally. But, again, this was me I really wanted to move on, kind of get past this war stuff. And I think afterwards, you'll see in the next session, the session after that, kind of things really kind of started to get better, and it wasn't so bad afterwards. Once people were kind of starting up book 2, everyone felt, okay, we can live with how kind of arbitrary and forced this was, but they're like, it's okay, we understand why you did it, and we kind of have enjoyed what's happened because of it. So in the end, it worked out, but that's also because my party is forgiving of me, fortunately. Though I'm still never going to live down spinning attack from 200 shirtless men. Again, thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope you guys kind of got something out of it. Hope you guys at least at the very minimum enjoyed the story. As always, show your support in likes or comments or subscriptions, and I'll see you next time. Stay cool.